I have two questions, one kind of frivolous and the other dead serious. The frivolous question is, what do you think of these Oregon counties who want to become part of Idaho? The dead serious one is, when will the state be open? Period.
Well, I'll address the frivolous question. And I'll address it primarily because we actually had a hearing. We had a joint House and Senate hearing and heard from the proponents of what they call Greater Idaho. And they're not attempting to change the name of the state, but they are attempting to join the state. And I just got an email from them, and they said that all 5 counties that voted on it earlier this week, all voted with an average of 62% in favor of joining Idaho. And I think that's a good thing. But it shows the further balkanization of the United States, because the 2 proponents that came to speak to us, one, his grandkids are 6th generation Oregonians on the same ranch, and he wants to leave Oregon. And the other one is the former Oregon Speaker of the House. So this is not an initiative that is led by people who don't know what they're talking about. There are many complications to it. I think that there could be some real positives for Idaho, but it's a very long process. But I wanted to address that. I don't actually remember what the second question was anymore.
When will the state be open?
We are as open as we can make it from a legislative standpoint. That was, the stages of reopening from the governor. That was the gathering limitations, the social distancing, those types of things. That was all done under the power of the Director of Health and Welfare. And as the new guy, I decided to look into this section of code that they were referencing as giving them the authority to put these limitations on the citizens. And when I read it, I was kind of surprised, and I talked to a number of my Senate colleagues saying, look, I know I'm new here, but this is what the Stay Healthy Order says. This is what the Idaho Code says, and I am not seeing any sort of connection between these two things. So if somebody can point this out to me, I'll sit down and shut up right now, but I'm not seeing how they have any authority to do this under the way the code is currently written. And so I set to work on rewriting this section of code. Got some good help from Senator Souza and some other folks in the Senate, and basically we rewrote very extensively that entire section to protect against the quarantine and isolation of healthy people, to give court redress for if you are isolated or quarantined against your will. You now have a maximum of 3 days before the court has to address your individual complaint, which we didn't have before. It was just if you were isolated or quarantined against your will, it was there was really nothing in code that you could do about it. So we did a lot of work to change those things, and I think the governor's office knew that we had the support and we were going to get the win there, because the morning that the bill was going to be brought to the Senate floor, he changed the Stay Healthy order to recommendations. They were no longer things that were required of the state, they were recommended. So it was no longer a 50-person limitation on gatherings. We think it would be smart if you didn't have more than 50 people. All of those things were no longer requirements at that point, they were just recommendations. And so they've kept a lot of the posturing to make people feel like they have to comply with these recommendations. But the reality is, at that moment, they changed them, and then we got the law passed. And so now there is no legal authority for them to put those kind of limitations on the citizens using the powers of the Director of Health and Welfare anymore. It is completely non-existent. 11:39.
Thank you.
And just to add on to those things a little bit, a lot of the questions here today have to do with how are we going to protect you from the different overreaches of government. And there are a number of things here. For one, I thought the US Constitution and the state constitution trumped everything. We just learned a little over a year ago that it doesn't. The First Amendment was suspended. Our government was initiated to protect life, liberty, and property. However, if your business was determined to be non-essential, you just lost your property. It was taken away from you. The Constitution, that's supposed to be our protection. That's the guiding document. That's the basis for this whole country. And it has been suspended. We need to fight to hold on to this. We all individually need to do that as well. But it's not as simple as it used to be, because there again, the First Amendment, it was first a reason, and we were told you had to quarantine, you couldn't go to church. Those things are absolutely unconstitutional. But it still happens. So each one of us has to stand up for our Constitution whenever that happens. Whether you're going to decide you don't want to get the vaccine, you do, that's your call. But the freedom is the thing we have to stand up for. But
so I just want to redirect you again to this sheet that many of you were given out in the foyer area. And it, again, goes through the 8 promises of legislation and action that we said last summer that we as a legislature would be doing in order to protect your freedoms, our freedoms. And we did each one of the things. We fulfilled every single one of those 8 promises. In addition to that, were the Second Amendment additional protections for manufacturing and processing and ammunition and all the rest of that during an emergency. But I also want you to know, and you all do know, that elections matter. We have seen that so dramatically across the country, but also in Idaho. I won't take a lot of time, but I will tell you that there was a dramatic attempt by an outside group. Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook gave a ton of money into a small nonprofit, and they tried to inject this across the country directly into county election offices. Not for candidates, not for a ballot measure, but to run the elections. Now, if you don't think that's a threat, if that makes us vulnerable, and it made a difference in many of the swing counties in the swing states, and the Democrats were crowing after the election results were in and the election was in the rearview mirror, they came out and said their action with this money directly into swing counties and swing states tipped the scales and made the difference in the presidential election. Well, guess what? Idaho was one of the states they gave money to. And there were 20 of 44 counties, not Kootenai County, because Kootenai County, and let's applaud for Kootenai County, did not apply. But 20 of our 44 counties did. And they got anywhere from $5,000 to Ada, who got $500,000. Now, if you don't think they are going to continue to come after Idaho, they will. They won't. What a gem in someone's crown on the liberal side would it be if they could make the difference in Idaho to flip Idaho from red to blue? They would love that. So we have to be constantly vigilant, and we have to make sure that our election laws are safe and secure. And that's the basis of this. That's the basis of all of our freedoms.
Mary, what happened to the bill you had to stop that?
Thank you, Steve. That was a nice thing for you to remind me. So I drafted a bill very quickly when this came to light. And by the way, I just got to tell you, because I was stunned by this. After I got the information about this Zuckerberg money, I did a lot of research and got a lot of information from the 20 counties that did accept this grant. And I took that information up to the Secretary of State's office, and they had no idea. No one communicated with them from any of the counties that took the money. Their jaws dropped to the floor, and they said, no one said a word. So I drafted Senate Bill 1168, and it went all the way through the system and was signed into law, and it says, no private money that may be used directly into our county election offices.
And real quickly, I'd like to just compliment Jim and Jennifer Locke. They do a phenomenal job in elections for it. I think we have a great team. And to kind of back up, not that he needs backup, but Representative Mendive said, you know, we did stay there way too long. On May 10th, we had 3 bills signed into law. The first, I'm going to be very brief here, dealing with emergencies and stuff. House Bill 391, this legislation clarifies that constitutional rights cannot be suspended because of a declared emergency. That's law. 2, the legislation clarifies that the power and authority to create and amend laws is reserved to the legislature, and that during a declared emergency, the executive branch cannot change laws. That's 2. 3, this legislation identifies that all jobs are essential and that any restrictions during a declared emergency be narrowly tailored to not place restrictions based on job type or classification. Now, those are 3 really strong laws. We still need to improve on them, but those 3 things go to what Representative Mendive was saying. It's a start, and it's a good start, and it's good for the people of Idaho.
And I would like to, I'm getting quite a line for questions here, it looks like, but I would like to add one thing. When will the state of Idaho be open? The state of Idaho is open. What we have is, we have a messaging problem. Whereas you follow the governor of Texas, he continually says, Texas is 100% open. The governor of Florida says Florida is open, and not only do we not have any mandates, the locals can't have any either, but we have a messaging problem because they're currently I'm sure in Kootenai County, I don't believe in any county, we no longer have any legal COVID restrictions left anywhere in the state of Idaho. But our governor just recently said we moved to stage 4. Again, these are only recommendations, but he continually messages things, in my opinion, poorly. But to my knowledge, Idaho is 100% open. And if there are restrictions, it's from school districts. We also passed a bill this session, which I sponsored. We will no longer have health districts making mandates on you without the approval of the county commissioner. And so if this pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, plandemic, scandemic, whatever you want to call it, if it kicks up again, we have instituted many changes to the laws, and we will not see a repeat of what we saw in 2020 and 2021.